Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here to review Quantum Leap Season 1, Episode 9. So, as we are to come back to Quantum Leap, because I haven't even gone on to, review much of, the retro episodes, because really, it's lucky for me to be able to put any content out recently. I've just had a lot of issues and so on and so forth. So, with that said, we have this episode that really doesn't bring the show back at a good point. I thought that the writing done for the show was freaking exhausting. Not only do we have a person who is to be not even halfway, barely halfway through this episode, to be named as the killer. And I was like, well, that's not really a surprise anyways. I could have figured that out. And they spend so much time on this person and why they are to be the killer and this and that. And so I was like, okay, all right, like you're wasting so much effing time, but okay, all right. So all to have us really watch how the rest of this episode plays out, and me really just wanting to give the middle finger to the show. After it's all said and done with, I was like, F this. This is to be a stupid episode. And we are to also have Janice, after a million years, come back into the show. And I was like, wow, isn't this great to finally have Janice be seen on the show, to actually have her have a story in the show. But then what they bring her back into doing, we just have Janice that is just chatting with Jen, and by the end of the episode they bring her in, and a lot of that just falls so freaking flat. As well as just a lot of this episode is just dialoguing you to death, and is just such a flat episode that I really didn't want to go on and get into so much detail about it when I was to figure out how I was going to do spoilers for this episode. And I was just getting really freaking annoyed and exhausted by man, I have to go on and figure out a way of where I'm going with the story at this point and that point. And I'm like, man, we're not even halfway through the episode yet. I'm like, and I was just like, man, this episode could not end any freaking sooner with all the freaking dialogue that is being flown into this episode. So the one good side of things was to have seen Deborah Ann Woll, who a lot of people probably know from the Netflix Daredevil show. I had gone on and seen her on Michael Rosenbaum's Inside of You, where she did an interview where she is to mention that she is going on and doing this kind of Dungeons and Dragons kind of content recently, and that she also has not yet been called to be a part of the new Daredevil show. And more than likely that might just be because they haven't started filming that yet, or maybe they don't want to incorporate Deborah's character into the show whatsoever. Maybe they're going on and they're trying something completely new with that show. Not quite sure, but also with how lackluster a lot of these Marvel shows have been, I don't feel like Deborah is missing a whole lot besides a paycheck. So with that said, we have Song, who is to leap into 1979 as a character known as Jack Armstrong. So we find that Jack Armstrong is to be this security detail that is to be bodyguarding Carly, and if it's to not be like the Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston kind of film, we find that Carly is to be this musician, but it seems like the way that they present Carly is to seem more like a movie star going to some premiere at a film. And I was like, what are all these glitz and glamour things for just some musician? This just kind of seems very odd to me. But maybe for 79, maybe music was held in a higher importance. But to me, I just found this to be very odd. And so, in all honesty, if I probably would have written the killer in this episode, I would have actually gone with that fan that tries to go on and maul Carly in the very beginning of this episode. And, like, further on, they could have kind of figured out ways to write this character in. But no, they kind of went. They went with the way that they went in this episode, and because I was thinking, it's like, well, like I thought they were to just kind of easily tell us where the story was going, and then I was like, okay, well, like the show ends up having to put so much effort to waste. Great idea, show. You put so much effort into something just to have it feel like a waste. Good job. So yeah, so we have Jack consistently being told by Allison that throughout this episode that Carly is going to die, and so Jack needs to scramble and figure out ways, and Jack is Ben, to try and prevent Carly's death, as it seems that there are certain objects that are going to fall on Carly, or Addison is to also mention how the murder is to play out and who could have really been the culprits at certain points of this episode. So we have that all going on, and so with that said, I think it's just about that time to just go into spoilers. And so this episode was awful, but like, are you surprised with kind of how the season just kind of started out and then eventually where it gets? So really, Quantum Leap wants to kind of have its premiere episodes like have a very low point and then eventually go on to possibly succeed, or just phone it in for the rest of the season. Who knows? We really should have had these episodes been big episodes instead of kind of flunkers. But so this episode did go on and remind me of like two episodes kind of mashed together, where originally Sam had gone on to be that kind of pianist episode, and also him to have gone on and been that actor that was consistently kind of getting into these accidents on set. Like, I was to kind of like smash those together and feel like that's how they wrote this episode. And so really, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into that double five. This episode was freaking awful. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this episode, or if you're like, well, hey, not a surprise because of how like the pilot started out and no one liked that. So let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil these episodes. Hopefully, I'm going to go on and figure out when all the other episodes drop. Because of course, if it was a tough enough time for me to get this one episode, hopefully I'm going to be able to go on and get the other episodes a little bit easier. But who knows? So with that said, We start off this episode with uh, Sam leaping into Jack. And I think the way the last episode set off uh, for episode 8, there wasn't a leap for that episode. And so they kind of figured out a way to just like, well, hey, we can just write whatever here. So Song helps Carly out of this car and is to all of a sudden find that there is a fan that mauls her. It's like, oh my god. So Jack protects Carly to have us realize that she is to be walking this red carpet on Carly Farmer's Tour 79. And I'm like, wow, they're doing a big, huge production for just some tour. And why wouldn't have anybody have gone on and just, like, had, like, the bus come in from the back and so on. Like, they have to make a huge la-di-da about this, I guess, because news coverage, I guess, during 79 had nothing better to do. So, we have Trevor that is telling Carly what her like addendum is for today, or what her things she's going to she's going to need to do, and that she's going to go on and have to do a meet and greet. And we of course have Carly that's to realize that she's going to have to do that after her performance. And Carly's like, okay, that's fine. Like, she's not going on and being a jerk to anybody. You know what? I would like it if Ben is to have to save somebody that's a complete a-hole. That's like the worst person in the world, but Ben is still like, well, like, but yeah, but I still have to, like, help them. I still have to save them, regardless of who they really are. So, and also, like, I would love it if Ben would have to leap into multiple people in the same time frame. Just have this kind of weird kind of leaping thing where he's leaping into all these people at the same time. And wouldn't that be interesting to kind of play this all out if Ben was to maybe like leap into like a whole family, or leap into a number of different people that were to all like do these like one specific tasks or these specific things. And then Ben was like, man, that leap was exhausting. But anyways, so Ben like wouldn't know who exactly he is for that episode. Like, what? So, anyways, we have Amanda that is telling Carly that her dressing room isn't ready, and we of course have Carly who is fine with that. It's like, well, hey, we're just doing a sound check. I'm not expecting the world here. So Song tries to figure who he is by kind of looking at his badges and just trying to put the pieces together. So Carly is to go on and sing this Traveler song, and it sounds very like Fleetwood Mac to me, like as if they were to take like the song like Chains and like try to like do it as a different like song. But then oddly enough, like the song that they sing later on doesn't feel like it has the same kind of tune. And so I was like, what the heck is going on, music? So while Addison is kind of just queuing up and doing a sound check, we have Ben that is kind of waiting around in the seats, the cheap seats, or maybe not cheap enough, to wait for Addison. So we have Jen that goes on to tell Addison that Song is in Chicago in 1979. Is Ben just always in Chicago? Or no. like there was another time where he like was in San Francisco, I believe, but still feels like he's in Chicago a lot for some goofy reason. Maybe that's where they filmed this whole entire show, so everything just feels like Chicago. Uh, or maybe they film it in Vancouver, because that seems to be where a lot of shows are just try to be cheaply made, because of course Canada, like you can just pay people less, like the Canadian actor, sadly, and that just feels wrong. But hey, like that is what it is for a number of those shows. So, uh, we have Magic that notices that Allison is obviously upset about Ben not telling Addison the truth, like right away before he left, that Addison was in danger and she now had to find out. And so Magic is kind of looking at the team. It's like, well, I guess she's upset. And Ian's like, are you surprised? Like, what gave it away? So we as we have we are Tav Song kind of listening to Carly singing a song called Traveling On, because the title of the episode is to be about a fellow traveler anyways. So Ben and Addison start to talk about what Ben can really remember, and all that he goes on to state is everything that we've already seen throughout this 9 episode story, and not much else. That he knows that he was working with Janice, and that Ben's goal of leaping was to try and save Addison, but that's all he really knows. So Addison asks that why couldn't Ben remember why he didn't tell her this mission, and Ben doesn't know. So we have Ben tell Addison that he is in 1979 as Jack Armstrong, and this is the date right before Carly's concert. So Ziggy says that Carly is to die during sound check, which is actually right now, and so Ben scrambles to run to get to Carly, and Addison notices that the stage lighting is going to buckle and is going to fall. So we have Ben that tackles Carly down to the ground, having this light fall and not hitting either one of them. And so we have Addison that is like, well, like this obviously was not an accident because Carly still dies later on tonight. So Magic has a meeting with Jen and Ian about the intel that they've uncovered already about Addison's possible life being at risk. So Ian claims that Song will leap into the future to save Addison at some point, and I'm honestly thinking it would make a lot more sense to possibly, instead of having Ben leap into the future, what if Ben instead has to leap into Addison's past to save her? Because I'm thinking it has something to do with possibly Addison's maybe like military experience, or whenever she was to say in like past episodes, that was to lead me to possibly think that it probably has to tie in with Addison's backstory rather than tying into a future event. And so, wouldn't that be really interesting to kind of play around with? And so we uh we have Magic that is getting a headache thinking about uh both Song and both Addison being at risk simultaneously, and these are the two people that they put into this Quantum Leap project. So the team needs to find Janice for this answer because she's the only one that knows why Addison is to be at all at risk. And maybe Janice is good after all instead of really and truly evil. So Ian figured out a way to track Janice using Ziggy during the time that they were on lockdown, and they don't have the staff to look through 40 different locations that Janice may be in. And so Jen makes a suggestion that there obviously is a place in Belize that has a power plant, and it's to possibly be the most like rational place for Janice to have gone. And so we of course have Magic that's like, okay, scramble the jet, let's go to Belize. So Ben and Addison see Elton John at this kind of after party, and they're contemplating that Elton John, of all people, could have killed Carly. I'm like, I'm sorry, like, Elton John is a massively famous musician. I don't think he had a huge game plan for wiping out Carly, because what does he really have to gain from this? So, we have Carly that asks about the fallen light, and she asks Ben that question, but then she figures it out herself why the light had fallen and how Ben could have figured out that it was falling. And and so like we have Carly that figures out in her own brain. It's like, well, like Jack is to be there as a security and is to know any possible threats. So he must have gone on and just kind of had this gut feeling that this light was going to give way. Blah 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 blah. So we have Carly that writes this off as some freak accident, and Ben was to say it's like, well, either way, it was scary. But yeah, like, it was an accident. So Carly leaves to get some fresh air, and so Addison needs to leave to research more on Carly's death because Ziggy isn't giving crap to them as far as real information because Ziggy still sucks. Or also, we have so many people that are going on to be working behind the scenes here, behind the leap here, to really just have to have Addison do her own research of what's going on with Carly's death, because I guess the rest of the team couldn't frickin' be bothered with this leap part of the show, and they would rather just go on and just kind of twiddle their thumbs and be doing something else than the actual part of the show, which is a freaking leap. Shouldn't they be focusing on the leap to help out Addison with extra information and already have this stuff kind of like already processed up to then have Addison not needing to immediately go on and start thumbing through all these things? What is the point of a team for? How lazy are they? I get it that they're working on that Janet case, but like, it feels like they're really just doing nothing. And so why? Why, I say, why? So we have Addison, or so Addison leaves, and we have Jack that that goes to again find Carly, and the two of them kiss. And we end up finding out that there were feelings between the two of these characters, both Jack and Carly, because it seemed that Jack had expressed in the past that there was feelings there, but they didn't know how to proceed from that. And Jack is like, well, I don't know how to proceed now because it seems like you have a lot on your plate. And I also am having this like investigation going on of what's really happening here. So like there's a lot on both of our plates. So like falling in love is going to be a difficult thing to try and do right now. So we have them talk about the life and the road and all this garbagey stuff for a music performer to just like, well, of course you're going to bring this up because a music performer has to go on and talk about how their life is very difficult and being on the road and not having like a real like place to just tie themselves down to and blah, 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 blah. So, and, we all of a sudden have this being interrupted by someone wanting Jack to we have someone who is to call Jack to get to Trevor, but then when Jack goes to find where Trevor is, Trevor's missing. So we find out that the group of friends that Carly used to have is to state that Jamie is there. That Jamie, of course, is to be Harley's younger sister, which of course is or Carly's younger sister. And so Jamie, I guess, was invited to this location, but they realized it's like, well, like this sister is not like stable and whatever, so like try to get rid of her anyways. So we have Ben that goes to meet up with Jamie, and we come to find out during the conversation between both Ben and Jamie, we have like Ben who thinks Jamie is to be a really nice girl. It seems like she's trying to clean herself up, and when we would of course have Song talking to Addison. Addison's like, well, hey, like Jamie murdered Carly. Jamie hasn't. So Jamie was never supposed to be invited, even though she had an invite, and Jamie wants to tell Carly that she loves her. So Jamie's to also tell Ben that she'll be in the Budget Inn. Ben's not really convinced that Jamie is to be the killer. There is a flashback that states is like, well, like you didn't think before that Tammy Jean was to be a killer in the prior Bounty Hunter episode, but come to find out she was to be a killer that shot one of those men. And so the court ruled that Jamie was the killer in the past, 45 minutes into the whole trial of things. And we have Ben that's like, well, like, what is the evidence? Like, we need to go on to really pull this case apart and figure out if Jamie could not be the killer. Maybe she was framed. So Addison has to leave again to figure out more of this case, while Carly does this interview, and she is to state that she's glad that she's to be in Chicago, and she loves deep dish pizza. So Addison talks with Ian about the case, and he is to love true crimes, and he is to somehow think that, yeah, Addison could not have been the killer, and that there could have been a alternative person, because uh, Ian wants to kind of have his own spin on things, and kind of rationale, whatever. Anyways, so we come to find out uh, that the interviewer is to talk about Jamie, and we have Trevor that states that that wasn't a true approved question, and Carly answers it anyways, stating that it's been 6 years since she's really talked with Jamie, and uh, Ian is to have looked into Jamie's record and is to find out about substance abuse and a restraining order and interventions and all these kind of things, making Jamie look out to be a bad person. So Carly mentions Jamie wrote music for her in the past and was to have sang really well, and Trevor, of course, is to talk to Ben about uh, how Jamie being here, and Jack is to talk about, like, well, like, Jamie had like a kind of a different state of mind than I was to like feel that like Jamie like has changed, is a different person. And so we have Trevor that tells Jack, hey, come with me. So we have Trevor that flops down these letters to give to Jack, stating that these, of course, were like these threatening letters that were all typewritten. And so I was like, wow, like anybody could have written those letters. And so Ian is to also find and uncover uh, all the letters, as well as the murder weapon that was in uh, Jamie's room. And so uh, Jamie was to also have no alibi for the murder. So uh, Trevor hands Ben this typewritten letter, and we have Ben that is to compare the letter with the invite, and they kind of look the exact same. Trevor grabs the letter. It's like, well, hey, like, it's a good thing that you showed me this now, because like you should have shown this to me a lot sooner. So we have Ben that might have been wrong, but Addison knows of a person with motive, and that, of course, is Trevor. I was like, wow, what a massive surprise. I would have naturally assumed that it was Trevor all the frickin' long. Even in the very beginning of the episode, I'm like, yeah, this guy's gonna be the one that kills her. Because he works with her. So, like, that has to be the killer, right? So, Janice is in Belize and looks at her phone, and Jen is to be asking, like, well, hey, do you happen to know what the Wi-Fi password is? And Janice is like, no, I don't. And then Janice realizes that it is Jen. It's like, oh, wow, like, okay, like, I guess we're going to have this talk. So Janice, of course, knows who Jen is, so Jen isn't going to, like, really just book him Dano right here now. And so Janice uh, and Jen are just kind of talking here. So we have Janice that tries to offer Jen a drink, and Jen is like, no, 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 no. Like, I know your past. You've gone on and drugged your mother, and like, I'm not gonna go on, and I'm not gonna like try to take a drink from you. So we also find out that Al had been a gambler in his past, and I was like, man, what a way to just kind of throw a previous character on the show under the bus. And he recently passed away. Like, come on. Like, I get it that there might be like some bad sides to certain characters, but still, like, they try to kind of do this like half in, half out thing where they kind of say something bad about Al, then they say something good, but then they say something bad about him again. And so I was like, what the show? Because they go on and state that it's like, well, hey, yeah, he was a gambler in his past, a horrible gambler. But yeah, but wasn't he a hero, though? And he saved so many lives. But then he also had a very odd fashion sense to do it in. And so it's like, man, you're just like back and forth, just gotta like trying to make him look good, but then also like throwing him under the bus again. Like, hey, like, it was the early, it was a time period of which that more than likely we just had like Al with just a wide variety of just a cluster of clothes during a certain time period. And yeah, like looking back on some of those shows, like some of the outfits and the clothes and the choices that they made were very odd. But when also looking about that show, it's like, I don't know how many times an original Quantum Leap episode would be so much well written than any of the stuff that is to come in currently. There would easily most oftentimes be really great episodes compared to what is now this, which this of course is be this kind of hodgepodging of like, well, hey, this is an amazing episode, and then, oh wait, this is a garbage episode, this is crap, this is the worst thing I've seen. And so yeah, it's just a mixture of like, why can't they get this right? We had so much of like Quantum Leap like from before, like really getting at least like some kind of good momentums, where there's a lot of good episodes, and then this one within 9 episodes we've kind of like, I could take this and I could take that, but like a lot of them are like just left to have me just be like, meh, like I'm just kind of meh about the show. But I would say it's like, well, hey, give it a shot still. But either ways, you can kind of look at all the retro episodes and like, well, hey, you said that you didn't like this episode, and hey, like out of all the episodes that you watch retro, like you were this and you were that, and like, okay, yeah, so I said that. But still, I liked a lot of the Quantum Leap episodes from the original, but I've always kind of stated that anyways. So, where was I? So, we have Jen that compares both her past and Janice's together and realizes like, well, hey, somehow I was to be able to get into the Quantum Leap project and you weren't. And so Janice is trying as hard as she can to save Addison, and Jen doesn't know why. And so Janice asks why. It's like, well, hey, like, why do you think that Ben, out of all people, came to me, just some rando stranger, instead of coming to any of you? Because he obviously doesn't trust you. And I'm like, let's wait till those wheels start a turning, and then we find out that all these characters would be like villains and we didn't know from the behind the leap scenes, and that's how they finally write those characters off. Wouldn't that be interesting to finally just get rid of that whole part and just stick with the leaping part, which would be a lot better off, but that's just me. So, or really just have to have, like, Janice replace Addison, which would have been, like, a huge, like, oh my god, wow, like, they're doing this so early in the show. So, with that said, we have Song that wants to know Trevor's motive, and it all comes down to like the credit of the latest album. And so if Trevor can go on and take out both Carly and both Jamie at the same time, then Trevor is to get all the money from the album sales, and he is to possibly get 50 million after Carly's death from rights from songs alone. So there's no proof that Trevor has. There's no way to prove yet that Trevor is to be the killer here, and so Addison wants Carly's death to be some kind of trap to lure the killer in. And we have Ben that's like, well, how am I going to break that to Carly? It's like, tell her that I'm from the future and I know all this knowledge about how she's going to die. And we have Addison that's like, no, if anything, like, if you talk to Carly and you can get her to trust you and vice versa, and with this information, then maybe it'll be fine. And so then we break this down to realize, like, oh, like, Ben is to realize that, like, Addison is still just kind of ticked about, like, how there was trust lost between the two of them. So we have Ben that states that there has to have been a good reason for what he did, and Addison is racking her brain trying to figure out what that could even be. So Ben doesn't want Carly to go on and take a walk as she is to come in. And so Jack tells Carly about Jamie, and Trevor gets upset for Jack mentioning about Jamie. And so Carly trusts Jamie, and Jack wants to protect Carly from doing anything out of her routine or doing anything that involves a routine. So we then got freaking so many like switching and transferring and so many different scenes we have to kind of fast forward our way through here. So we have magic that is to mention about a warrior's mindset, and Addison is frustrated but says that she's fine anyways. We have magic that states it's like, well, hey, like we've been through so many leaps together, 9 leaps, 9 episodes, and so I feel like we shouldn't hide behind words like fine. And so Addison is like, well, like I guess I am angry, and says that Ben is hiding something, but says it's protecting her. And so we have Ben, or we have magic that's like, well, hey, like as soon as I figured this out, also or learned this, like I wanted to go on and just kind of throttle Ben too, but like there's nothing we can do about it now, and so we have to just have our feelings need to be shared. So Carly drinks at a bar while friends are contemplating if Carly would have died. And I'm like, yeah, I would have been heartbroken if Carly would have died. Yeah, like those checks would have stopped been coming in, and I would have stopped performing, and I would have been getting that money, that sweet, delicious money. So Carly apologizes to Jack and never wanted to be a singer, but Jamie really wanted to do this talent show, and so Carly went with her to just kind of be this good sister. So Addison comes in saying that that song was right all along. And Carly starts talking about Jamie, blah 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 blah. So, uh, Trevor wrote the letters, not Jamie, because they could figure out, like the way that Trevor was to kind of type his words or his vernacular or whatever. That it obviously has to be coming from Trevor and not Jamie. So we had Ben that comes to realization that the more that Trevor could keep Jamie apart from Carly, the more money he could get. So we have Addison who wants Ben to tell Carly what's really going on here. Because, of course, Ben has already kind of stated and kind of figured out this case. And so he goes on to tell Carly that that Trevor may be the killer here, and because he had gone on to possibly write those letters. So Carly leaves the bar knowing Jamie must have been really hurt and betrayed from all those years not have to have written those letters. And Ben tells Carly that they can't change the past, and I kind of had a good chuckle about that. I'm like, well, what is Ben doing right now on this show if you can't change the past? So I thought that was ironic. They will have to go on and do this together, and it seems that they're also going to have to avoid a car coming at them together. So Carly slaps Trevor as they make their way back, and Trevor says that Jamie was always a dangerous girl, and Carly fires Trevor. Carly wants to get her time back with Jamie, and Ben goes on to state, like, well, we can't change the past. What if he just kept saying that throughout every episode? He would go on and tell everybody, it's like, well, we can't change the past. That should have gone on and like been like his mantra. Like that's the thing that they should just slap on the show to, like, we can't change the past. Cause that line makes no sense coming from a person who can do that. And that's what he's doing right now. So, Ben talks with Janice about how Addison isn't an, Jen, okay, yeah, so Jen is to talk with Janice and talk about how, like, Addison was just a way to get Janice to get to Ben. And maybe that there isn't a real thing for Addison being in danger after all. And it was just Janice's way to sink her hooks into Ben. So, what must be so important that Janice wants to help Ben so badly? And Janice is wearing her dad's ring, and Janice is saying, it's like, well, yeah, like, Al was a hero, even though he, of course, was to go on and have very odd wardrobe-like choices. And so Janice says people can't be trusted at the Quantum Leap project, or Ben would have never come to her to seek out help. So Jen has security that grabs Jen, and she's like, well, I paid these guys, and so their mind is so, like, and Jen is like, oh, really? Well, I paid them more, so they're going to take you in. So Uh, we then have Song watches over Carly and Jamie, because like Song had not slept for a whole entire day, to kind of protect Jamie here or protect Carly here. So Jamie is to be at this door, and so we now have Ben that wants both Carly and Jamie to reunite here. So Carly doesn't know what to say, and we of course have Ben that's like, well, just like state the obvious, like you've made like a big mistake and you've been paying for it ever since. So Jamie meets Carly, and Jamie apologizes, and Jamie lost everything at some point, and both of them hug. So Song tells Addison they did it. That like this must be like the whole like finishing up of this. We have Ben who can leap now, and Addison is to be like yeah, not so much. So Addison says that it's not over, and we have Ben that's like, well, wait a minute, like so it must not be Trevor, and so Addison says, yeah, because whoever the murderer is has to go backstage, which of course Trevor cannot, because Ben was to take Trevor's backstage pass, and so he can't go back there to kill. So, uh, so it has to be someone uh, that is to be able to go backstage and is to now have the location of the weapon change from Jamie's room to now Jamie's coat. Here's one thing. What if we would have gone on and had it be Trevor, and we're thinking the whole time that it isn't Jamie? By the end of the story, it is Jamie. I would have been blown away by this episode if they went in that direction to have us think there's no way possible that it's Jamie, and then by the end of it, we have Jamie kill, and I'm like, whoa, what a spin of this story. That would have been pretty good. I would have liked that episode if it would have gone that direction, or the crazed fan at the beginning of this episode. But anyways, so we have Ben that wants Carly to cancel the show, and Carly's like, well, no. Like, I'm not gonna like just cancel my life because this is going on because it just may never stop. So Carly's like, no, I want to go on and I want to be bait for whoever this person is, and you can go on and catch him, Jack, because I trust you. So Carly and Jack take Carly and Jack make their way to the front of this place that they're going on tour, and so photos are to be taken of them as they head into this concert. So, Jamie hugs Zach, and we of course have Jack, who's kind of checking on Jamie's coat to see if the weapon is already there. So, Trevor was to be surprised by that invitation that was given to Jamie, and so now if Trevor may not be the murderer, we have Ben thinking that it's like, well, whoever the killer could quite possibly be has to be somehow connected to Trevor. So we have Ben scrambling to get to a phone and to call the Drake Hotel, and needs a dime to make this call. So Ben said someone had invited Jamie that wasn't Trevor to this to this concert and to all these other things. So we have Ben that wants to know from Trevor, uh, who else could it be besides him? And we all of a sudden have these doors that are opening early, and the security is just kind of ticked off, like, well, hey, who opened these doors? So we have Trevor that mentions one of the backup singers, Loretta, had a moment where she was to date Trevor, and they were kind of off again, on again. So more than likely, Loretta could be the closest to who could really be the killer here. So I'm like, really? Loretta is just some rando character that really had no like part of the story where I really give a rip about her. Like, man, if you would have gone on and gave me Jamie at the end of this, or at least even just given me Trevor, I would have been way more jazzed about this. But then we have this rando Loretta, and I'm like, like who freaking cares? Like, that is just the stupidest story. But I get it. It's always about who is the least likely killer for every one of these stupid things. And it can't just be an obvious choice. But really, I thought that Loretta was just like, man, you guys just suck at writing. Because that was a character where I was like, yeah, I didn't even like realize she existed because like she didn't matter to me. So, we have a flashback where Loretta had talked to Ben before about Carly's sister, and kind of having like Ben be like, well, yeah, like maybe Loretta could be the culprit here. So, Loretta. Oh no, wait. And so we again have Ben, who is just running to try to get to Carly here, trying to figure out where she is. So we have Loretta that calls to Carly, stating that Jamie is going to need to talk to her. And so Carly then heads to where, of course, Jamie is, and the security is kind of going on and kind of figuring something else out. So we find that Jamie is to be knocked out. Loretta is to come up with a knife, and we have Ben that is to stop Loretta just in time before she is to start slicing and dicing. So we have Ben that ends up getting stabbed in the process. We have the security that is to be calling for a medical assistance for both Jamie and Ben. So we, of course, have Ben who realizes he is to have gotten stabbed, and he's like, man, I've never been stabbed before. Ben tells Addison there's Ben tells Addison that they're better as a team, and as the medic is kind of coming and trying to take care of them. So Janice gets taken by Jen, and now Janice is to make her way to the Quantum Leap headquarters, talking to Ian about like, well, hey, like you use Ziggy to track me down, and Ian is like, well, like I don't want to go on and state exactly how I, of course, was to have gone on and figured that out, but so we have Janice that tells Magic that her mother says hi. Magic tells Jen it must feel good to have caught Janice, and Jen is much more concerned about what she will tell them next. So Ben won't go to the hospital because he wants to make sure that Carly is safe still, because there might be some killer brewing into the shadows somewhere. So, holy crap, we've almost gone into an hour, and this is a 42-minute episode. Holy So, there's so much crap to say in this episode. So, uh, we uh, have to find out that now Jamie is going to be Carly's backup singer. Carly asks, of course, Ben if they can finally go on a date, or Jack in this case. So we have Jack that's like, well, I think I can clear my schedule and we can get something together. So we have Carly that goes out and starts to sing and is to say that it's a very special night because she's reunited with her sister Jamie. So Ben goes on to talk with Addison, saying that, like, well, hey, you better not tell me that Carly's gonna die again. And Addison's like, no, 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 no. And it's all good news from here. So uh, Jamie, of course, is to stay clean. Carly continues on her tour, and Ben will be fine at the end of this. He won't die from his stitches. So Ben realizes the mistake he had made and won't do it again from the whole not telling Addison uh, how she is to possibly go on and die. So Ben leaps into Dr. Goldman, who is to be in the middle of a pregnancy in a parking lot somewhere. And Ben will need to deliver this baby, and that, of course, is to be the oh boy moment. And we leave this episode. So, with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. I'm sorry for how long this took. This episode was to not be that good, anyways. So, at the end of the day, I can understand if people don't go on and watch this review because it wasn't a good episode. So, with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.